The Galactic Arena was a bit like a carnival, if carnivals were run by homicidal maniacs who thought safety regulations was a dirty phrase. Every species with an ego the size of a small moon came here to prove their worth, or at least their ability to survive a variety of lethal challenges that would likely put a smile on a sociopath's face. In the center of this madness, Commander Rin Jack stood like a man who just realized he'd bet his life savings on a three-legged horse. "I'm telling you, Celine, this whole thing's a bloody circus," Rin growled, staring at the arena's towering walls. They loomed overhead like the universe had wrapped a vice around his skull. "A circus where the lions are armed and the clowns are allergic to laughter." Celine Voss, the ship's engineer and professional cynic, adjusted her tool belt with the kind of patience reserved for people waiting in DMV lines. She was about as impressed by the arena as she was by Rin's gift for stating the obvious. And yet here we are, ready to be the galaxy's next punchline. "Hope you've been practicing your pratfalls." Their ship, the Rust Bucket, officially named the Void Voyager but renamed by the crew to accurately reflect its charm, had landed amidst a sea of other vessels, each one trying its best to look more intimidating than the last. Alien spectators filled the stands, their combined disdain for humanity practically palpable. Rin imagined they were all thinking the same thing. How long until these squishy bags of water get themselves killed? "You know," Celine remarked, her voice laced with sarcasm sharp enough to cut through their shared tension, "I always dreamed of dying in some forgotten corner of the universe." Might as well add in front of a hostile audience to the list. Rin smirked, glancing at the spectators, an assortment of creatures ranging from the mildly terrifying to the downright grotesque. One particularly nasty-looking entity with too many eyes and a face only a mother could love stared back at him. "I'm sure they can't wait to see how creatively we bite the dust," the arena's announcer, a gelatinous blob with an enthusiasm as synthetic as its body, oozed into view, voice amplified by unseen speakers. "Welcome to the Galactic Arena, where only the brave, the bold, and the barely sane dare to tread." "I'd like to think we're at least 2 out of 3, Rin muttered. "The vacuum exposure trials will commence shortly," the blob continued, its tone suggesting a practiced indifference to the mortality rate of participants. "Please ensure your affairs are in order." Rin exchanged a look with Celine. "I don't know about you, but I'm feeling more optimistic by the minute." Celine chuckled darkly. "Right. Like a turkey on Thanksgiving." The two of them walked toward the preparation zone, where various other contestants were suiting up or saying what they assumed would be their last goodbyes. A pair of reptilian figures with scales as reflective as a disco ball eyed Rin and Celine with a mixture of curiosity and hunger. "Humans," one hissed, its tongue flicking out to taste the air. "So fragile, so breakable." Rin flashed the kind of smile that suggested he'd love to throw one of them into a black hole. "Oh, we break all right, but sometimes we break what's in front of us too," Celine nudged him. "Save the bravado for when we're not outnumbered 10-1, huh?" "Oh, come on. What's life without a little reckless stupidity?" Celine rolled her eyes but didn't disagree. Rin suspected she found his particular brand of recklessness as contagious as a bad cold. As they suited up in their pressure suits, designed more with budget constraints than comfort in mind, Rin couldn't help but wonder if they'd make it through the trials with all their limbs still attached. The suits were stiff, unwieldy, and about as stylish as a burlap sack. "Look on the bright side," Celine said, adjusting her helmet. "If we're going to die out here, at least we'll do it looking like fashion disasters." Rin chuckled, though the sound was muffled by his helmet's visor. "Remember when they said space travel would be glamorous?" He gestured towards their surroundings. "This is what they meant, right?" "Sure," Celine said with a snort. If by glamorous they meant like trying to find a comfortable spot on a bed of nails. The announcer's voice boomed again, echoing through the arena like the galaxy's most droning alarm clock. "Participants, take your positions. The trials are about to begin." Rin took a deep breath, the recycled air tasting like old gym socks. "Let's get this over with." Celine nodded, her face obscured by her helmet but her determination clear. Just another day defying death. No big deal. They moved to their assigned positions, joining the hodgepodge of other species ready to prove their mettle or meet their maker. As they stood side by side, Rin couldn't help but feel a flicker of pride, not just for himself but for humanity. Sure, they were seen as underdogs, but that didn't mean they wouldn't surprise a few smug aliens along the way. The starting buzzer blared, a sound designed to get hearts racing and bowels tightening. The vacuum exposure trial was underway, and as predicted, things started going wrong immediately. Equipment malfunctioned, some contestants panicked, and more than one alien made a swift retreat. "Just like home," Celine quipped, dodging a piece of debris that had been knocked loose. Rin laughed, a sound tinged with adrenaline-fueled madness. "Yeah, except home doesn't have a front row seat of intergalactic critics judging our every move." The goal was simple enough: cross the arena's vacuum chamber without becoming an unplanned addition to the cosmic dust. Of course, simplicity was often the prelude to catastrophe. As they maneuvered through the chaos, Rin's suit began to shudder with a vibration that had no business being there. He tapped his comms, voice strained with barely contained irritation. "Celine, tell me this is part of the design." "Sure," she replied dryly. If faulty wiring and imminent death were features. Rin cursed under his breath, knowing full well that in the grand tradition of human engineering, their suits had probably been assembled with all the care of a toddler building with blocks. Despite the odds, they pressed on, each step in the vacuum a defiance of expectation. Alien spectators watched in a mix of anticipation and disappointment, some openly hoping for a human failure. But Rin and Celine had one thing those aliens didn't count on: an insatiable stubbornness that refused to let them quit. They reached the halfway point, a floating platform designed to test their balance, or, more accurately, their ability to cling onto anything for dear life. Rin stumbled, nearly losing his grip before Celine caught his arm. "Careful," she deadpanned. "I haven't finished writing your eulogy yet." "Thanks, Mom," Rin shot back, regaining his footing. The finish line loomed ahead, a tantalizing promise of survival. Rin could almost taste the sweet, recycled victory air as they pushed forward, every fiber of their being screaming to stop, to breathe, to rest. But they didn't. Rin and Celine pressed on, matching each other's pace with a silent understanding that if one went down, the other would follow. They reached the end just as their suits' oxygen alarms began to shriek, a reminder of how little time they had left to savor their accomplishment. The announcer's voice returned, lacking any genuine enthusiasm. "Congratulations, humans. You've survived." This time, Rin and Celine locked eyes, sharing a grin that spoke volumes. They'd done it. Against the odds, they'd proven that humanity wasn't as frail or breakable as the galaxy thought. They'd survived the galactic arena's vacuum exposure trial, and they'd done it with style. "See," Rin said, his grin widening. "I told you we'd make it." Celine smirked, her expression equal parts relief and triumph. Yeah. "Don't get cocky, Rin. We're just getting started." As they made their way back to the ship, Rin couldn't shake the feeling that this trial was just the beginning. The arena had more challenges in store, each one more dangerous than the last. But for now, they'd take their victory and wear it like a badge of honor, proof that humanity, for all its flaws, could stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's best and worst. And maybe, just maybe, surprise the universe along the way. The galactic arena wasn't just a place for testing courage. It was the universe's ultimate proving ground for anyone desperate or stupid enough to think they had a chance. Rin and Celine, having survived the vacuum exposure trial against all odds, were now back at the rust bucket, picking through the debris of their immediate future. They were the scrappy underdogs in a cosmic dogfight, and the arena was the universe's way of saying, "Let's see how good you are at ducking." "Well, that went better than expected," Rin said, tapping the side of his helmet to release the clingy stink of recycled sweat and adrenaline. We only almost died 3 times. Celine snorted, unbuckling her suit with the finesse of someone who'd done it far too many times. I was aiming for twice, but I guess I'm an overachiever. The rust bucket, as always, was an extension of their less-than-glamorous reality, a patchwork of salvaged parts and duct tape, a metaphor for their lives if ever there was one. Outside, the alien spectators were milling about, no doubt already placing bets on how quickly these pink-skinned apes would meet their end. Rin peered through the ship's viewport at the crowd, a kaleidoscope of scales, fur, and appendages that would give a taxonomist a nervous breakdown. "I think they are rooting for us," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Right," Celine replied, joining him at the window. Like a cat roots for a mouse in a maze. Beyond the rust bucket, the galactic arena loomed, an architectural abomination that seemed to taunt its contestants with every towering spire and jagged edge. It was as if the galaxy's best architects had gotten drunk on alien moonshine and decided to build something that screamed, "You're not welcome here." Celine leaned closer to the glass. "I saw one of those reptilian bastards from earlier. He was selling human-shaped piñatas." Rin chuckled darkly. "They must have heard about our durability, probably got a bulk discount on the papier-mâché." Their laughter was cut short by the sound of the announcer's voice resonating throughout the ship, as unavoidable as a tax collector at a wedding. "Attention, all participants. The next trial will commence shortly. Please prepare to have your hopes and dreams systematically crushed." The trial was called the Gauntlet of Peril, a name as subtle as a punch to the face. Contestants would navigate a labyrinth filled with traps designed by some of the galaxy's most sadistic minds. As if that weren't enough, the labyrinth was also crawling with creatures eager to make a meal out of anything slow or unlucky. Celine turned from the viewport, a gleam of determination in her eyes. "Do you think we should have signed up for that knitting contest instead?" Rin shrugged. "Knitting needles are just as deadly in the right hands." The two of them suited up once more, their movements tinged with the resigned acceptance of those who know they've made a terrible mistake but are too stubborn to admit it. The pressure suits, still reeking from the last trial, were as comforting as a hug from a cactus. As they stepped onto the arena's platform, the alien spectators above erupted into a cacophony of jeers and laughter. To them, humans were a novelty, a rare species that somehow managed to persist despite their obvious shortcomings. Rin nudged Celine. "Smile for the cameras. If we make it out of this, maybe they'll put us on a cereal box." "Right next to the disclaimer, 'Not suitable for children under 5, Celine replied, strapping a utility belt around her waist. The belt was a hodgepodge of tools, each one as likely to fall apart as the last. The announcer's voice cut through the din, dripping with insincerity. "Contestants, welcome to the Gauntlet of Peril. Please remember, the only thing standing between you and certain death is your wits, or lack thereof." Rin glanced at the other contestants, a motley crew of aliens, each one looking as nervous as they were determined. He caught sight of a particularly large insectoid creature who seemed to be sizing him up like a buffet option. "What's the plan, boss?" Celine asked, adjusting her helmet. Rin considered their options, which were few and generally terrible. "Try not to die, and if we get separated, remember, the safe word is help." The labyrinth's entrance yawned before them, a dark maw that promised pain and probably some really unpleasant splinters. With a final nod to each other, Rin and Celine stepped into the shadows, their path lit only by the faint glow of their suits' indicators. Inside, the labyrinth was a maze of metal walls and shifting floors, designed by engineers who clearly hated living things. The air was thick with the scent of ozone, and a vague, unsettling musk that Rin hoped was just the labyrinth's idea of air freshener. Every corner brought a new surprise, each more unpleasant than the last. Blades swung from walls, floors dropped away without warning, and the entire place seemed to be alive with the sound of mechanical snickering. Celine cursed as she narrowly avoided a set of spikes that shot up from the floor. "Who designs this crap? It's like a homicidal carnival ride. Rin laughed, the sound tinged with mania. Probably someone with a vendetta against life. Their progress was slow, each step a calculated risk. Around them, other contestants weren't faring much better. A giant, armored slug creature found itself trapped in a net, its shrill cries echoing through the corridors. A duo of avian aliens fluttered overhead, desperately trying to avoid the swinging axes that made the place feel like a butcher's shop on a windy day. "At least we're not the only ones having a bad time," Rin observed, dodging a jet of flame that singed the air where his head had been moments before. "That makes me feel so much better," Celine replied dryly. "Misery loves company, right?" They pressed on, the labyrinth's shifting walls guiding them deeper into its bowels. The trials were relentless, each one demanding more of their dwindling energy reserves. Yet somehow, despite the odds, they managed to stay one step ahead of disaster. But the real challenge was yet to come. At the heart of the labyrinth lay the final obstacle, a creature known only as the Sentinel, a guardian that made sure no one left the labyrinth without a good reason, or at least without a few missing limbs. Rin and Celine rounded a corner to find themselves face to face with the Sentinel, a hulking mass of muscle and malice. It stood at the center of a wide chamber, its many eyes locked onto them with an unsettling intelligence. "Well, that's new," Rin muttered, eyeing the creature's assortment of limbs and the wicked claws that adorned each one. "Think we can reason with it?" Celine asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "Sure, if by reason you mean run like hell," the Sentinel roared, a sound like 1,000 engines revving at once, and lunged toward them with alarming speed. Rin and Celine scattered, each taking a different path around the chamber's perimeter. "Any bright ideas?" Celine called, ducking beneath a swipe that would have taken her head off. Rin glanced around, searching for anything that might give them an edge. His eyes landed on a series of conduits running along the wall's power lines if he had to guess. "If we can lure it to those conduits, maybe we can fry it." "That's a big maybe," Celine pointed out, leaping onto a platform that gave her a better vantage point. "Got any better ideas?" She paused, considering. "Not really." "Let's give your suicidal plan a shot." With a plan that barely deserved the name, they began their grim dance with the Sentinel, each move a desperate bid to outmaneuver the beast. It was a balancing act of feints and dodges, each step calculated to draw the creature toward their makeshift trap. The Sentinel was relentless, its claws ripping through the air with deadly precision. Rin could feel the creature's hot breath on his neck as he sprinted toward the conduits, Celine mirroring his path on the opposite side. As they neared the conduits, Celine fired up her multi-tool, a device that was probably not rated for this kind of work, and began to slice through the cables. Sparks flew, the smell of burning insulation mixing with the scent of imminent disaster. "Now or never, Rin," she shouted, hoping the wires would hold long enough to deliver a lethal jolt. Rin turned, just in time to see the Sentinel charging toward him, eyes glinting with malice. With a final, reckless leap, he dove aside, praying the creature's momentum would carry it into the trap. The Sentinel plowed into the conduits, its roar of rage cut short by a blinding flash of electricity. For a moment, the chamber was filled with the acrid scent of ozone and burnt flesh. When the light faded, the Sentinel lay motionless, its massive form twitching as residual currents danced across its body. "Well, that was electrifying," Rin quipped, rising to his feet with a groan. Celine joined him, her face flushed with adrenaline. "You know, for a minute there, I thought you were going to be toast." "Me too," Rin admitted, grinning despite himself. With the Sentinel defeated, the labyrinth's exit was finally revealed, a door that slid open with a reluctant hiss, as if the arena itself was displeased at their survival. They stepped through, the bright lights of the arena blinding after the gloom of the labyrinth. The alien spectators had mixed reactions, some booing their success, others too stunned to respond. "Looks like we made a few fans," Celine said, waving to the crowd with exaggerated cheer. "Yeah, And a few more enemies, Rin replied, noting the scowls of several alien bookies who'd clearly lost big on the human survival. As they returned to the rust bucket, Rin couldn't help but feel a glimmer of pride. They'd faced the galaxy's most dangerous spectacle and lived to tell the tale. Sure, they weren't out of the woods yet, plenty more trials lay ahead, but they'd proven that humanity had a place in this mad, deadly carnival. And if they had to fight, claw, and joke their way to the top, then so be it. The rust bucket's engines hummed their tired lullaby as Rin and Celine nursed their bruises, the galactic arena now a fading nightmare behind them. Rin sprawled across a chair that had seen better days, probably around the same time dinosaurs did. Celine fiddled with a control panel, her fingers deft, eyes focused. "Well," Rin said, voice tinged with disbelief, "we're not dead." "Yet," Celine replied, not looking up. Emphasis on the yet. The vacuum exposure test had been a different kind of hell. They'd been stripped of comfort and sense, left to flounder like fish in a blender. But they'd survived, which was a novelty in itself. Rin could almost picture the alien spectators, their smug expressions melting into something resembling confusion. Not that he cared much for their opinions. They were just another set of eyes watching humanity's eternal struggle with mediocrity. "You know, Jax," Celine said, her tone shifting to something dangerously close to sentimentality, "sometimes I think about the old Earth pioneers, those nutjobs who crossed oceans in floating fire hazards. They had guts." Rin chuckled. "Yeah, and no sense of self-preservation. But hey, maybe that's what makes us human. Our stupidity is our charm. Or our survival mechanism," she suggested, pulling a loose wire from the panel with a satisfying snap. "No one expects much from us, so when we exceed expectations, it's a shock to the system." "Speaking of shocks," Rin said, gesturing around the rust bucket, "aren't we supposed to be fixing this junk heap?" Celine sighed, her cynical veneer slipping into exasperation. "I'm a miracle worker, not a magician. This ship's held together by hope and duct tape, and the hope's running thin." Just then the comm unit crackled to life, the voice of the arena's announcer bleeding through the static like a bad hangover. "Attention, contestants. The results of the vacuum trial are in. Most of you survived. A few did not. But never fear, the next challenge is just around the corner." Rin groaned. "Wonderful, just when I thought we could catch our breath." "Catch it. We're lucky if we can hold it in a paper bag without it tearing," Celine said, tossing the broken wire over her shoulder. "What do you think they'll throw at us next? Flesh-eating amoebas? Rabid space gerbils? With our luck, probably all of the above," Rin said. He stared out the viewport, the stars stretching into infinity, a perpetual reminder of just how small and insignificant they were. And yet, here they were, two humans defying the odds. Their ship, the Void Voyager, affectionately known as the Rust Bucket, creaked in protest, as if echoing their doubts. Rin had always felt a kinship with the vessel. Both were patched-up remnants, survivors of countless scrapes, held together by sheer stubbornness. Rin looked back at Celine, who was now examining a particularly suspect patch of wiring with the intensity of a detective at a crime scene. "You ever think about quitting? Just packing it all up and leaving this madness?" Celine smirked, a lopsided grin that suggested she might just be crazy enough to enjoy this. "And miss out on the fun. Besides, where would we go? I'm too pretty for prison and you're too dumb for anything else." "Fair point," Rin conceded. He'd been in worse spots with less company. At least Celine had a sense of humor, even if it was blacker than a black hole's shadow. The ship's intercom buzzed again, a tinny announcement crackling through the static. "Commander Jax and Engineer Voss, please report to the debriefing chamber. Your performance is under review." "Under review," Rin muttered. "Right, because they expect us to write a thesis on how not to die." "More like how to die slower," Celine quipped, pulling herself away from the panel. "Let's get this over with. Maybe they'll give us a medal, or a bill," Rin added, rising from his chair with a reluctant sigh. "Either way, at least it'll be interesting." They made their way through the ship's corridors, the lighting dim and flickering, a constant reminder of their precarious existence. The debriefing chamber was a sterile room, all metal surfaces and harsh lights, designed to strip away any semblance of comfort or privacy. Just like the arena, everything here was meant to test them, to probe for weakness. Inside, an alien representative waited, a creature with more limbs than a centipede and eyes that blinked in unsettling patterns. It regarded them with a mixture of curiosity and something that might have been pity. "Humans," the alien began, its voice a series of clicks and whirs. "You exhibit resilience." Rin shared a glance with Celine. "Is that a compliment or an insult?" "Take it as a compliment," Celine whispered, "before they remember what we're worth on the black market." The alien continued, seemingly unfazed by their exchange. "Your performance was unexpected. It has caused recalculations." "Recalculations, huh?" Rin said, crossing his arms. "Does that mean we're finally getting some respect around here?" The alien blinked, a ripple of confusion crossing its features. "Respect is a subjective concept, but your survival is intriguing. Intriguing enough to maybe, I don't know, rig a trial or two in our favor," Celine suggested, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "That would be unethical," the alien replied, its tone as flat as the atmosphere. "Figures," Rin muttered under his breath. "Well, if nothing else, we're here to keep you guessing." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter or indigestion. "Continue to survive. It benefits us all." "Glad to be of service," Celine said with a mock salute. With the debriefing over, they returned to the rust bucket, leaving the alien to its calculations and moral ambiguity. As they settled back into the ship's worn confines, Rin couldn't help but feel a begrudging sense of achievement. They'd managed to surprise the galaxy's most jaded audience and lived to tell about it. "So," Rin said, leaning back with a satisfied sigh, "what now?" "Now," Celine replied, raising an eyebrow. "We wait for the next trial and hope it's something simple. Like juggling chainsaws in zero gravity." "Simple, huh?" Rin chuckled. "You know, I've always wondered what it would be like to have one fewer limb." "As long as it's not your drinking arm," Celine shot back. "We've got a reputation to uphold." Rin grinned, the weight of impending doom momentarily lifted by their shared humor. Whatever the arena threw at them next, they'd face it head-on, just as they always had. With grit, determination, and a healthy dose of sarcasm. They might not have the best ship or the best odds, but they had each other. And in a universe as unforgiving as this one, that was more than most could hope for. As the ship hummed around them, Rin allowed himself a rare moment of introspection. He thought of Earth, of the pioneers who'd stared into the void and seen opportunity where others saw only danger. Sure, they were idiots, but they were his kind of idiots. The kind who'd face impossible odds with a grin and a plan that was more hope than strategy. "We might just make it," Rin said, mostly to himself. Celine snorted. "Yeah, and pigs might fly." "Hey, in this galaxy, anything's possible." "True," she conceded, a hint of genuine warmth in her voice. "Just don't start sprouting wings and oinking. I've got enough on my plate without dealing with that mess." The calm crackled again, a reminder that their next trial was looming closer with every breath. But for now, they had a moment, a pause in the chaos to regroup, recalibrate, and maybe even relax. Because in the end, that was the human way. To find a glimmer of hope in the darkest of places, to laugh in the face of adversity, and to keep moving forward one step at a time. And as the stars streaked by, vast and uncaring, Rin couldn't help but feel a flicker of defiance. Because even in a universe that seemed to conspire against them, they were still here, still fighting, still human. And perhaps, against all odds, that was enough. The rust bucket's engine room was a symphony of complaints, groaning like an old man who'd just been asked to get up from his favorite recliner. Celine was knee-deep in the ship's guts, occasionally pulling out parts that looked like they'd been chewed up and spit out by a particularly disgruntled robot. Rin leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching her with the kind of fascination reserved for train wrecks and reality TV. "So, is there a method to this madness, or are you just trying to impress the aliens with interpretive mechanic dance?" Rin quipped. Celine paused, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. "Oh, you know me, Rin. always aiming to be the galaxy's top performance artist. "This piece I call Desperation in D minor, catchy title," he replied, stepping into the mess. "Think it'll catch on, about as well as a lead balloon," she sighed, returning to her work. "But hey, at least it's got rhythm." The ship's intercom crackled to life again, that same announcer's voice dripping with thin enthusiasm. "Attention, contestants. The next trial will commence shortly. Environmental hazards have been increased. Prepare accordingly, prepare accordingly," Rin repeated with a snort. "Yeah, because we've just got a magic bag full of solutions for environmental hazards." "Hey, speak for yourself," Celine shot back. "I've got a lucky screwdriver." She brandished the tool like it was Excalibur, and for all Rin knew, it might just be. "Guess that makes you Merlin," Rin said, flashing a grin. "Got any other tricks up your sleeve?" "Well," she said, squinting at the control panel, "there's always duct tape. And if that fails, good old-fashioned human stubbornness." "Ah," the classic Rin agreed. "The things we achieve through sheer bloody-mindedness." Celine chuckled, a sound that was equal parts amusement and disbelief. If only the other species knew. They'd probably be horrified at how often humans survive by just refusing to die, or too dumb to realize we should, Rin added, stepping closer to peer over her shoulder. "What's the plan here, Captain?" "The plan is not to die horrifically," she said matter-of-factly, twisting a particularly stubborn bolt. "Beyond that, I'm winging it, winging it." "My favorite strategy," Rin said. "Is that how you won the most likely to survive award in engineering school?" "Damn straight. It's all about setting low expectations and then occasionally exceeding them." The ship gave a particularly ominous lurch, like a drunk man trying to regain his balance. The lights flickered before stabilizing into their usual dim gloom. "Environmental hazards, huh?" Rin mused. "What's the worst that could happen?" "Oh, I don't know," Celine said sarcastically. "How about sudden decompression, unexpected gravity shifts, maybe a plasma storm or two?" "Sounds like a vacation," Rin replied. "Maybe we should have been meteorologists instead of arena contestants." "Yeah, but then we'd have to pretend to care about the weather," Celine said. "At least here, we get to piss off aliens with our continued existence." "Speaking of which," Rin said, nodding towards the viewport, "they're watching." And indeed they were. The arena's alien spectators filled the holographic screens that lined the walls, their expressions ranging from mildly intrigued to visibly frustrated. It wasn't every day humans managed to stick around this long, and their unexpected success seemed to be generating quite the cognitive dissonance. "Think they're rooting for us?" Rin asked, though he already knew the answer. "If by rooting for us you mean hoping we trip over our own feet and die hilariously, then yes," Celine said. "We're probably the underdogs of the galaxy. Or just the punchline to a cosmic joke, and we're the only ones not in on it," Rin said, shaking his head. "Figures." Celine tightened the last bolt with a final twist. "There, that should hold. For a while, at least, your confidence is inspiring," Rin noted dryly. "Hey, it's lasted longer than any relationship I've ever had," Celine replied, stepping back to admire her handiwork. "Besides, what's life without a little uncertainty, longer and less interesting, I'd wager." "Exactly. Now come on," Celine said, gesturing towards the ship's common area. "We've got a trial to prepare for, and I don't want to die hungry." The ship's mess was another exercise in minimalist design. If by minimalist you meant prison chic, Rin rifled through their meager supplies, eventually settling on something that could reasonably pass for food if you squinted at it in the dark. "Rehydrated mystery paste," he declared, holding up a packet. "A delicacy for those who hate themselves." "Just the way I like it," Celine replied, tearing open her own pack with all the enthusiasm of a parolee facing another 10 years. They ate in companionable silence, the kind that spoke of shared experiences and mutual understanding. Rin watched Celine as she contemplated her meal with the solemnity of a philosopher pondering life's great mysteries. "You know," Rin began, "there's something oddly comforting about this, eating flavorless goo in a tin can while planning our almost certain deaths." She asked, raising an eyebrow. Exactly, Rin said. It's the little things, really. Little things like not being dead yet. Celine asked. Yeah, those, and having someone to complain about it to. Celine smirked, her eyes glinting with something almost like warmth. You know, Jax, if I didn't know better, I'd think you were trying to be sentimental me. Rin scoffed. Perish the thought. The ship's alarm blared, a siren's call heralding the start of their next trial. The arena's voice echoed through the corridors, each word heavy with artificial grandeur. Contestants, prepare yourselves. The trial begins in 5, 4, 3, time to show the universe what humanity's made of, Rin said, standing up and dusting off his hands. Blood, sweat, and bad decisions. Celine suggested, rising to join him. Exactly. Let's give them a show they'll never forget. They made their way to the docking bay, the ship's interior humming with the energy of imminent chaos. As the airlock cycled open, they were greeted by the sight of the arena, vast, intimidating, and utterly indifferent to their survival. The trial space was a sprawling landscape of treacherous terrain, bathed in the harsh light of a distant star. Jagged rocks jutted from the ground like the broken teeth of some ancient beast, and the air was thick with the promise of danger. Welcome, humans, the arena's voice intoned. Your trial today is one of endurance and ingenuity. Survive the harsh environment and prove your worth. Endurance and ingenuity, Rin echoed. Sounds like a typical Tuesday. Guess we'd better get started before the universe changes its mind, Celine said, surveying the terrain with a critical eye. Right, Rin agreed, clapping his hands together. Let's do this. They stepped into the arena, the ground crunching beneath their boots. The air was hot and dry, like an oven set to incinerate. Celine adjusted her equipment, a collection of modified gadgets and tools that looked like they'd been cobbled together in a mad scientist's garage. Think these'll hold up? Rin asked, gesturing to the contraptions. Well, they are either going to save us or explode spectacularly, Celine said. Either way, it'll be interesting. They navigated the terrain with the cautious determination of people who knew just how precarious their situation was. Rin kept an eye on the horizon, scanning for potential threats while Celine focused on the ground, her mind a whirlwind of calculations and contingencies. Watch your step, she warned, pointing out a narrow crevice. One wrong move and we're space pancakes. Noted, Rin replied, hopping over the gap with a flourish. Can't have that on my resume. They pressed on, their progress steady but tentative. The landscape shifted around them like a living thing, each new obstacle a reminder of their vulnerability. As they climbed a particularly steep incline, the ground beneath them trembled, sending a shower of loose rocks cascading downwards. Great, Rin muttered, bracing himself against the tremor. Just what we needed, an earthquake. Hey, it's all part of the experience, Celine said, her voice steady despite the situation. Nothing says adventure like geological instability. They reached the top of the hill, pausing to catch their breath. The view from their vantage point was a stark reminder of the trial's scale, a vast expanse of harsh, unforgiving beauty. Think we're halfway yet? Rin asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Halfway to what? Celine replied, scanning the horizon. Halfway to dead, maybe. Always the optimist, Rin said with a grin. As they continued, Celine's gadgets began to prove their worth. A handheld scanner beeped a warning, alerting them to a pocket of toxic gas hidden in a shallow depression. They skirted the hazard with a wide berth, Celine making a note of the scanner's accuracy with a satisfied nod. Looks like your gizmos are paying off, Rin remarked. See, who needs magic when you've got science? Celine replied, a hint of pride in her tone. Their path took them into a narrow canyon, the air growing cooler as the canyon walls rose around them. The shade was a welcome relief from the sun's relentless assault, but it also brought new challenges. Stay sharp, Celine cautioned, her eyes flicking to the shadows. This place is prime ambush territory. Great. Just what I wanted. A surprise party, Rin said, his voice laced with sarcasm. Sure enough, moments later, the ground erupted in a flurry of movement as a pack of alien predators burst from hiding, their sleek forms adapted perfectly to the canyon's rocky terrain. Predators, Rin shouted, raising his weapon. Yeah, I see them, Celine replied, already moving into action. The creatures were fast and coordinated, their attack a blur of teeth and claws. Rin and Celine fought back with a practiced efficiency that spoke of experience and desperation. Rin's blaster hissed with each shot, finding its mark with deadly precision, while Celine's gadgets whirred and buzzed, creating defensive barriers and offensive countermeasures. One of the creatures lunged for Rin, its jaws snapping closed inches from his face. He retaliated with a swift kick, sending it sprawling back with a yelp. Not today, Fido, he growled, pivoting to cover Celine's flank. The fight was quick and brutal, the predators eventually retreating with the realization that their prey was not as easy a target as they'd hoped. Nice work, Celine said, wiping sweat from her brow as the last of the creatures slunk away. Thanks, Rin replied, breathing hard. Guess we're just full of surprises today. Let's hope we've got a few more up our sleeves, she said, her eyes scanning the canyon for any remaining threats. They pressed on, their determination fueling their steps as they navigated the canyon's twists and turns. The trial was a relentless assault on their senses, each new challenge a test of their resolve and ingenuity. As they emerged from the canyon, the landscape opened up before them, revealing the arena's finish line, a distant marker that seemed to shimmer in the heat haze. Almost there, Rin said, his voice a mix of relief and exhaustion. Almost, Celine agreed, though she knew better than to celebrate too soon. The final stretch was the hardest, each step a reminder of their fatigue and the weight of the trial. But they pushed forward, their movements fueled by the stubborn refusal to give in. As they crossed the finish line, the arena erupted in a cacophony of sound, a mix of applause and discontent from the alien spectators. The announcer's voice boomed with a grudging respect. Humans, you have completed the trial. Your performance has been unexpected. Unexpected, huh? Rin said, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. I'll take that as a compliment. Unexpected's better than dead, Celine replied, the corners of her mouth twitching upwards. They stood together, side by side, the satisfaction of survival a balm against the trials they had faced. In that moment, they were more than just contestants. They were defiant, resilient, and Rin Jax leaned against the hull of the rust bucket, feeling every bit the commander of a rusty tin can on the verge of collapse. He glanced at the vast expanse of the galactic arena they just conquered, now illuminated by an ominous, swirling nebula that hadn't been there 5 minutes ago. It twinkled with all the malevolent charm of a serial killer's grin. Well, that's new, he said, gesturing to the cosmic anomaly with a nod of his head. Celine Voss, crouching nearby with a wrench in one hand and a gadget that looked like it had been assembled by a caffeinated raccoon in the other, snorted. Just what we needed, a cosmic middle finger from the universe. Nice touch. The arena's voice crackled over the intercom, less grandiose and more panicked this time. Attention, unexpected cosmic event detected. All contestants remain calm and follow safety protocols. Rin and Celine exchanged a look that said, yeah, right, louder than any words could. Safety protocols, Rin scoffed. I bet they've got a pamphlet for that, probably written in crayon, Celine agreed, wiping her hands on her overalls. Let's get back inside before the universe decides to throw a tantrum. They headed back to the rust bucket, the ship's name an honest descriptor of its condition. The hull groaned as the airlock cycled, welcoming them into its familiar, albeit rickety, embrace. Home sweet home, Celine quipped, tapping the control panel. The ship's lights flickered in response, more out of spite than compliance. Looks like that cosmic event's got the whole place on edge, Rin observed, noting the ship's erratic behavior. Celine shrugged, already lost in the mess of wires and circuits under the control panel. I've seen toaster ovens more reliable than this thing. But hey, at least it's consistent with our luck. Rin settled into the cockpit seat, glancing out at the nebula which seemed to pulse menacingly. Consistent's one way to put it. I'd go with cursed. Celine chuckled, a low, throaty sound. At least we get front row seats to the universe's latest horror show. The Rustbucket's comm unit crackled to life, broadcasting the arena's increasingly frantic announcements. All spectators and participants, please be advised. Anomaly is causing significant disruptions. Evacuation procedures are being initiated for your safety. Well, that's not ominous at all, Rin said, flipping switches on the control panel with the enthusiasm of a man defusing a bomb. Evacuation, huh? Celine said, only half listening as she tinkered with the ship's stubborn circuits. Hope they've got enough lifeboats for all those aliens betting against us. Guess we'll find out, Rin replied, trying to ignore the fact that their chances of evacuation were about as good as winning the galactic lottery. The comm unit crackled again, this time with the panicked voice of some alien official. Humans, are you receiving this? Your ship is primitive. You may not survive the anomaly's effects. Nice of them to notice, Celine muttered, pulling out a fistful of singed wiring. Though primitive is putting it mildly. Rin shrugged, smirking. Primitive, sure. But still kicking. Barely, Celine countered, though she couldn't help but grin back. Though if they are worried, it must be serious. Serious enough to interrupt their little spectacle, Rin said, glancing again at the nebula's unnerving dance. Could be fun, fun. Celine echoed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. If your idea of fun involves imminent death. Hey, everyone's got their hobbies, Rin replied, his eyes fixed on the swirling chaos. I'm just trying to make lemonade out of cosmic lemons. Celine shook her head, but there was a spark of camaraderie in her eyes. Well, let's hope this lemon doesn't squeeze us into pulp. The Rustbucket shuddered, a not-so-gentle reminder of the ship's precarious state. Rin checked the sensors, noting the spike in radiation levels. Looks like that thing's throwing a tantrum. Celine finished her repairs with a satisfied huff, slamming the panel closed. Well, let's hope this bucket of bolts holds together. I'd hate to get vaporized before dinner, speaking of which, what's next on the menu? Rin asked, more to distract himself from the impending doom than actual curiosity. More rehydrated paste, Celine replied, wrinkling her nose. A culinary masterpiece. Delicious, Rin said dryly. Another reason to survive, they both laughed, the sound echoing through the cramped confines of the ship. It was the kind of laughter born from desperation, the type that said, we're in over our heads, but screw it. The comm unit sprang to life again, the alien voice now tinged with something akin to respect. Humans, we have observed your resilience. Perhaps you can assist us. Rin's eyebrows shot up. Assist them, us, Celine chuckled. Guess they're really desperate, yeah, desperate enough to think we're their best shot, Rin mused, rubbing his chin. What do you say, Voss? Feel like saving the universe? She considered it for a moment, then shrugged. Why not? Beats sitting around waiting to die, true enough, Rin agreed. Besides, think of the story we'll have if we make it out. Celine grinned, a mischievous glint in her eye. Yeah, who wouldn't want to hear about the time we saved a bunch of aliens from their own mess? The ship shuddered again, the vibration rattling through the hull like a death rattle. Rin switched to comms, his voice casual despite the chaos. All right, alien buddies, what do you need us to do? The alien replied, still sounding unsure. We are attempting to contain the anomaly. It requires a manual override from within its field. But our systems are incompatible. Incompatible, huh? Celine said, crossing her arms. Good thing we're experts in jerry-rigging incompatible systems. Rin nodded. Tell us where and we'll see what we can do. The alien transmitted coordinates to their display, the location dangerously close to the swirling nebula. Rin studied the map with a frown. Well, that's going to be a tight squeeze. Just how I like it, Celine said with a wink. Let's get this show on the road. Rin piloted the Rustbucket towards the coordinates, the ship's engines protesting every inch of the way. The nebula loomed larger, its chaotic energy crackling around them like static on a bad connection. Ready? Rin asked, glancing at Celine, who was already checking her gear. As I'll ever be, she replied, securing her tools with the studious care of someone who knows that one loose bolt could spell disaster. The rust bucket approached the nebula's edge, the ship groaning like an old man getting out of bed. Rin steeled himself, focusing on the task at hand. All right, let's make this quick. In and out before the universe decides to drop another surprise. Got it, Celine said, already working on the manual override. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, finding connections where none should exist. The nebula's energy swirled around them, the ship's instruments going haywire in a symphony of beeps and alarms. Celine cursed under her breath, her fingers flying over the controls. Almost there, she muttered, sweat beading on her forehead as she fought against the alien technology's stubborn refusal to cooperate. Rin monitored the sensors, aware of the ticking clock. "We've got company," he warned as the display lit up with approaching ships. Alien rescue craft, no doubt, but the rust bucket wasn't exactly on friendly terms with their tech. "Tell them to hold their horses," Celine snapped, her focus razor-sharp. Almost got it there. With a triumphant shout, she completed the override, the nebula's energy stabilizing into a less lethal, though still writhing mass. "We did it," Rin said, disbelief coloring his voice as the chaos around them began to settle. Celine leaned back, wiping her brow with the back of her hand. "And we're not dead." Bonus. The comm unit crackled to life once more, the alien's voice now laden with gratitude. "Humans, you have succeeded. The anomaly is contained." Rin exchanged a look with Celine, a shared moment of victory in the face of overwhelming odds. "Guess we just saved the day," he said, unable to keep the smile from his face. "And all it took was risking our necks in the universe's worst neighborhood," Celine replied, her grin matching his. The rust bucket, no longer under the strain of the nebula's chaos, seemed to sigh in relief, its creaks and groans settling into a more familiar rhythm. Rin set a course back to the arena, the ship's engines humming with what might have been relief, if a ship could feel such a thing. As they flew back, the comm unit buzzed again, this time with the arena's official voice. "Humans, your actions today have been noteworthy. You have proven your ingenuity and resilience." "Noteworthy," Celine said with a derisive snort. "We just saved their sorry hides and all we get is noteworthy." Rin chuckled, shaking his head. "It's a start. They might even send us a fruit basket. Hope it's not rehydrated," Celine replied with a wry smirk. As they approached the arena, the alien spectators were in a frenzy, their earlier disdain giving way to something closer to awe. Rin and Celine watched the chaos unfold on their displays, the alien panic a stark contrast to their own wry amusement. "Well," Rin said, watching the spectacle with a sense of satisfaction. "Looks like we made an impression." "Yeah," Celine agreed, her tone filled with a mix of pride and incredulity. "Guess humanity's not so primitive after all." They docked with the arena, the ship's systems cycling down with a sense of closure. The trial might have been over, but their journey was far from done. There would be more challenges, more trials, and undoubtedly more cosmic curveballs waiting in the wings. But for now, they'd earned a moment to breathe, to laugh, and to savor the small victories that kept them moving forward. In a universe that seemed determined to crush them, they'd done the impossible and lived to tell the tale. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Rin Jax leaned back in his seat, surveying the aftermath of their heroics with the casual air of a man who might have just parked a starship in a tight spot. The rust bucket hummed around him, a symphony of creaks and groans that had become strangely comforting, a constant reminder of their ever-looming doom, and yet here they were, still defying the odds. "Not bad for day's work," he mused aloud, scratching at the stubble on his chin as if it might reveal a secret map to the galaxy's best dive bars. Celine Voss, seated cross-legged on the floor amidst a veritable junkyard of spare parts, snorted. "Not bad. We just prevented an interstellar catastrophe with a ship held together by duct tape and wishful thinking. I'd call that a bloody miracle." "Right," Rin replied with a smirk. "Maybe they'll put up a statue of us." "To the humans, they didn't die," Celine chuckled, tossing a wrench back into her tool bag with a clatter. "Betcha it'll be made out of the same crap alloy they used on this ship, rusty and full of holes." Rin squinted at the nebula shrinking on their view screen, a swirling mass of cosmic chaos no longer threatening to eat them alive. "Still, you'd think they'd at least throw us a parade or something." "I mean, we saved their tentacled asses." "Yeah, but we're human," Celine pointed out, hauling herself to her feet. "We're not exactly the arena's favorite species, more like the scrappy underdog everyone's betting against." "Well, I do love an underdog story," Rin said, leaning forward to toggle a few switches on the control panel. "Especially when we're the ones doing the barking." Their banter was interrupted by the blaring of the intercom, a voice so nasal it could slice through the densest of starship hulls. "Attention, all contestants, final trials are approaching. Environmental hazards increased. Please report to your designated sectors." Celine winced at the volume, rubbing her ears. "Do you think they crank that up just to mess with us?" "Probably," Rin replied, adjusting the volume to something less likely to cause permanent hearing loss. "Anyway, sounds like the show's about to start again." "Fantastic," Celine grumbled, checking the charge on her gadget, a cobbled-together monstrosity of wires and circuits that had no business working as well as it did. "And here I was hoping for a nice, quiet evening of not dying." Rin shot her a look. "You know what the arena's like. They'd rather see us scramble than relax. Keeps the crowd entertained." The comm unit crackled to life once more, this time with a different voice, dripping with the barely concealed disdain typical of the arena's announcers. "Human contestants Jax and Voss, report to the main arena. The final trial awaits." "Guess we're the main attraction," Celine said, rolling her eyes. Rin grinned. "Wouldn't miss it for the universe." They made their way to the docking platform, the rust bucket's airlock hissing open with a wheeze that sounded suspiciously like exhaustion. The arena loomed before them, a massive structure of steel and light that pulsed with an unearthly energy. Rin and Celine stepped into the main corridor, the path ahead lined with alien spectators of every conceivable shape and size. Their eyes, sensors, or equivalent organs fixated on the pair with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. "Smile for the cameras," Rin muttered under his breath, giving a half-hearted wave to a particularly squid-like creature with 6 eyes and the temperament of a disgruntled librarian. They entered the arena proper, the floor stretching out before them like the stage of an ancient coliseum, albeit one with more flashing lights and a definite lack of lions. Above them, the observation decks teemed with spectators, their collective gaze a tangible weight pressing down. "Feels like a reunion," Celine said dryly, surveying the crowd. "Just missing Aunt Mildred and her famous potato casserole." "Let's hope the arena's hazards are less toxic," Rin quipped, his eyes scanning the displays that showcased their opponents, various species of alien warriors, each more bizarre and deadly-looking than the last. The intercom blared again, announcing the rules of the final trial with all the enthusiasm of a bored accountant reciting tax codes. "Contestants will navigate the arena's terrain, overcoming obstacles and neutralizing threats. Success will be determined by survival." "Survival," Celine echoed, adjusting her toolkit with a resigned sigh. "Easy peasy." "Just another day at the office," Rin agreed, though his eyes were sharp, assessing every detail of the arena. "Anything we can use to our advantage." Celine surveyed the terrain, a chaotic landscape of shifting platforms, energy barriers, and unpredictable hazards. "If we can get to that central control node," she pointed, "we might be able to rig the environment systems to give us a leg up." Rin nodded, a plan forming as he traced the path they would need to take. "Okay then. Let's show them what humans are made of." The signal to begin was a cacophonous roar, the arena's systems flaring to life in a spectacle of color and sound, designed to thrill the bloodthirsty crowd. Rin and Celine moved as one, their steps sure and swift as they wove through the maze of obstacles. They ducked under a swinging blade, a construct that seemed to be equal parts overkill and architecture, the kind of thing that would make OSHA inspectors weep. "Who designs this stuff?" Celine asked, her voice breathless from exertion. "Someone with a sick sense of humor," Rin replied, narrowly avoiding a burst of energy that scorched the air beside him. The first wave of alien adversaries appeared, their approach heralded by the clatter of armor and the hum of advanced weaponry. Rin and Celine each knew their part in this deadly dance, years of experience making their movements seamless. Celine deployed her gadget, a device that spat out a chaotic eruption of electromagnetic interference, causing the aliens' weapons to misfire spectacularly. "Welcome to the human show," she shouted, her grin fierce as she swung a wrench towards the nearest foe. Rin followed her lead, his own weapon, a jury-rigged blaster spewing bolts of energy that scattered the enemy ranks. "You guys should have stayed home," he called over the din, "or at least upgraded your defenses." With the first group dispatched, they pressed forward, reaching the central control node. Celine's fingers flew over the console, her mind alight with possibilities as she hacked into the system. "Give me a sec," she said, tongue poking out the corner of her mouth in concentration. "Almost there." As she worked, Rin held their position, fending off another wave of attackers with a barrage of fire. He could feel the adrenaline pounding through his veins, sharpening his reflexes, heightening his senses. "Got it," Celine exclaimed, her voice triumphant as she finished her adjustments. The arena's lights flickered, the platforms shifting to create a new path that favored their position. "Nice work," Rin said, a rare note of admiration in his voice as they began their advance once more. "Let's finish this." The arena's hazards, once a deadly impediment, now served to aid their progress, blocking enemy approaches and providing cover for their movements. The alien spectators, once baying for their blood, watched in stunned silence as the humans turned the tide. Celine laughed, the sound wild and defiant, echoing across the arena. "And they said we couldn't do it." Rin's smile was grim but satisfied. "Guess they underestimated what a couple of humans can accomplish when they're pissed off and out of options." The final stretch loomed before them, the path clear save for the last line of defenders, more formidable, more determined, but still just another hurdle to overcome. Together they charged, their movements a blur as they took on the aliens with a combination of brute force and tactical ingenuity. Celine's gadget crackled with energy, disabling shields and scrambling sensors, while Rin's blaster sang a deadly song. When the dust settled, they stood victorious, breathing hard but very much alive. The arena's silence was profound, a testament to their unanticipated victory. "Well, would you look at that," Celine said, her tone a mix of disbelief and pride. "We did it," Rin nodded, scanning the crowd of aliens, many of whom still wore expressions of shock. "Yeah, we did, and we didn't even need capes." The intercom, this time subdued, crackled one last time. "Humans Jax and Voss, your performance has exceeded expectations. The trial is complete." "Exceed expectations, my ass," Celine muttered, though her eyes sparkled with triumph. As they made their way back to the rust bucket, the alien spectators began to stir, their disdain tempered by a reluctant respect. Rin and Celine had done the impossible, had shown the galaxy what humanity was capable of when backed against the wall. "Think they'll remember us?" Rin asked as they boarded their ship, the familiar confines of the rust bucket welcoming them back like an old friend. "Oh, they'll remember," Celine replied, her voice firm. "And next time they won't underestimate us." Rin settled into his seat, the exhaustion of the day finally catching up to him. "Next time," he echoed, closing his eyes as the rust bucket hummed beneath him. "Guess we'll just have to raise the stakes." Celine leaned back, a contented smile on her lips. "Here's to surviving another day." And with that they set their sights on the stars, the universe their oyster, their story far from over. But for now, they could rest easy, knowing that when push came to shove, humanity had more than proven its worth. Rin Jax and Celine Voss reclined in the rust bucket's cockpit, basking in the rare glow of victory. If you could call a death-defying, sanity-questioning romp through an interstellar gladiatorial bloodbath a victory. Still, they had survived, which in the galactic arena was the closest humanity got to a standing ovation. "Think they'll throw us a parade?" Rin asked, draping himself over the pilot's chair like a cat that had gotten too comfortable. "Maybe a ticker tape made of apologies and tears," Celine snorted, a sound that was half amusement, half disbelief. "If we're lucky, they'll just stick to dirty looks and passive-aggressive silence." "Sounds like a family reunion," Rin said, stretching his legs out. "Minus the booze and awkward hugs." The comm unit on the rust bucket crackled, the static-laden voice of the arena's announcer filtering through. "Human contestants have returned to their quarters. Further analysis required." "Analysis?" Celine raised an eyebrow, her fingers idly tapping the edge of the console. "What, did our survival screw up their spreadsheet?" "Probably broke their calculators with the sheer weight of unexpected data," Rin said. "Guess they weren't ready for a couple of humans with nothing to lose and even less to live for." Celine gave him a sideways glance, her smile more sincere. "Speak for yourself, Jax. I've still got a pizza recipe to perfect." "Right, priorities," Rin nodded sagely. "Defeat a galaxy's worth of skeptics, then master the art of dough." The rust bucket's engines hummed, the familiar sound wrapping around them like the embrace of an old, if slightly malfunctioning, friend. They'd patched her up more times than they could count, and yet she still seemed to have a few surprises left. "Think the aliens are still watching?" Rin asked, a hint of mischief in his voice. "Oh, definitely," Celine replied, adjusting her seat. "They'll be glued to their screens trying to figure out if we cheated." Rin chuckled, running a hand through his hair. "I mean, technically, we did use a bit of creative problem-solving. Or, as I like to call it," Celine interjected, "survival instincts." The intercom interrupted their banter, this time with a tone that suggested an alien trying and failing to suppress a serious case of indigestion. "Jax and Voss, your recent performance has intrigued the council. They wish to speak with you," Celine sighed. "Great. A council of aliens who probably have nothing better to do than grill us about our superior tactics." "Don't worry," Rin said, standing up. "We'll dazzle them with our charm and wit. And if that fails, there's always Celine's wrench." Their footsteps echoed down the rust bucket's corridors, metal on metal like a poorly tuned symphony. The docking platform awaited, the airlock opening with a whoosh that felt almost welcoming, like an old friend running out of patience. As they disembarked, the grand expanse of the galactic arena stretched before them, a monument to architectural hubris and alien ego. The alien council chamber was an imposing structure, designed to intimidate and awe, though Rin suspected mostly just to waste construction materials. The council themselves were a motley assortment of species, each looking as if they'd been dragged unwillingly from a taxidermist's fever dream. The lead alien, a being with more tentacles than any self-respecting organism should have, cleared its throat in a universal sign of someone about to say something long-winded and condescending. "Humans," it began, the word dripping with the kind of disdain usually reserved for reality TV stars and used car salesmen. "Your performance in the arena was unexpected." "Thanks," Rin replied, flashing a grin that was all casual defiance. "We aim to misbehave." The tentacled alien's eye stalks twitched, a sign that it either found Rin's response amusing or was about to have a stroke. "We must understand how you achieved such a feat given your limitations." Celine stepped forward, her expression the picture of earnest curiosity. "Limitations," she echoed. "Oh, you mean like our inability to sprout extra limbs or fire lasers from our butts?" A ripple of what might have been laughter or possibly gas pains ran through the council. The lead alien looked unimpressed. "Your species lacks the advanced technologies and abilities of many arena participants." Rin shrugged. "Well, that's the thing about humans. When the chips are down, we don't rely on fancy gadgets or superpowers. We use what we have: stubbornness, duct tape, and the occasional stroke of genius." Celine nodded. And let's not forget panic-induced creativity. Works wonders when you're about to be turned into space dust. The tentacled alien's expression was unreadable, though Rin liked to think there was a glimmer of respect buried beneath those layers of disdain. Your ingenuity is commendable. The Council is interested in further study of your capabilities. Study? Celine raised an eyebrow, her tone shifting from casual to cautious. We're not exactly lab rats, you know. Indeed, the alien agreed, though its tone suggested it wasn't entirely convinced. We propose a partnership. Share your methods with us, and in return, you shall have access to our advanced technologies. Rin and Celine exchanged a look, the kind of wordless communication forged in the fires of shared insanity and mutual survival. It was tempting, undeniably so, but there was no such thing as a free lunch, especially not from a species that saw you as a curiosity rather than a colleague. We'll think about it, Rin said finally, his voice carefully neutral. But first, we'd like a guarantee that any collaboration doesn't involve invasive probing or excessive paperwork. The Alien Council murmured among themselves, a chorus of clicks, hums, and guttural sounds that could have been a conversation or an interstellar death metal band warming up. Finally, the lead alien nodded. Agreed. You have shown us that humanity is capable of more than we anticipated. Glad we could expand your horizons, Celine responded dryly. As they turned to leave, the weight of the Council's gaze heavy on their backs, Rin couldn't help but chuckle. You know, he said, this might be the start of something beautiful, or at the very least something hilariously chaotic. Celine smirked. As long as there's more of us and less of them trying to dissect our brains, I'm in. Stepping back onto the rust bucket, they were greeted by the familiar creaks and groans of their beloved ship. Rin slumped into the co-pilot's seat, exhaustion tugging at his limbs. So, what do you think? Will the galaxy ever understand us? Probably not, Celine replied, firing up the engines with a deft flick of her wrist. But that's what makes it fun. As the rust bucket lifted off, leaving the arena and its bemused occupants behind, Rin let out a contented sigh. Sure, they just picked a fight with an entire galaxy's worth of prejudice and stereotypes, but they'd done it together, and for now, that was enough. Here's to being misunderstood, he said, raising an imaginary glass. Celine joined him with her own invisible toast, her smile a beacon of defiance and determination. And to the chaos we leave in our wake. With a final glance at the stars beyond, the rust bucket shot forward, leaving behind a trail of stardust and a lesson in human resilience that would, hopefully, outlast even the most stubborn alien misconceptions. The rust bucket shuddered like an old man finding his glasses in the morning and broke through the atmosphere into the cold embrace of space. It was the kind of ship that made you question the sanity of anyone who called it home, but for Rin Jax and Celine Voss, it was the only thing that'd probably stick around longer than their life expectancy. Granted, if they kept poking the galaxy with a stick, that wouldn't be saying much. So we're officially the arena's resident freak show. Rin quipped, tapping at the console like it owed him money. Looks that way, Celine responded, hands working on a panel that looked more like an exploded cheese grater than a control board. Think we'll start getting fan mail if we do. I'm moving to a planet where the highlight of the day is watching paint dry, Rin replied, tossing a glance out the viewport at the starry vacuum. At least there, no one's trying to dissect us. Celine snorted, a sound that mixed skepticism and amusement into a cocktail that would probably taste like despair. You're assuming they can find a planet with paint that's slower than the bureaucracy in this quadrant. Fair point, Rin conceded, leaning back in his chair with the grace of a man who thought comfort was a conspiracy against productivity. I can't believe they want us to share our methods. Methods? Celine scoffed, giving the panel a final, victorious slap before it flickered to life. I'm surprised they didn't just call it dumb luck. Rin laughed, a sound laced with the kind of gallows humor you picked up after surviving one too many close calls. Seems like luck's the only thing humans are good at in this galaxy. That and making things other species can't begin to understand, like pizza, Celine added, her eyes gleaming with mock seriousness. Oh, definitely pizza. Rin nodded. We could start an interstellar pizza franchise. Jack's and Voss's Galactic Slices, with our signature dish, tentacle-free toppings, Celine suggested, her voice dripping with the same sarcasm that had gotten them into, and out of, more trouble than they cared to count. As the rust bucket settled into the vast nothingness, Rin's mind wandered to the Council's offer. Advanced technologies, they'd said, in exchange for their ingenuity. It was tempting, sure, but there was a catch. There always was, especially when the ones making the offer had more limbs than patience. You think they'll follow through? Rin asked, more to fill the silence than out of any need for reassurance. Do I think they'll give us fancy toys and not expect us to self-destruct with them? Celine mused, a hint of mirth in her voice. Nope. I think they'll keep us around like a science project and pull the plug when they get bored. Optimistic as ever, Rin remarked dryly, watching as the stars drifted lazily by. But hey, at least they acknowledged we're good at something, besides being a pain in their multi-tentacled backsides. Celine shot back. Exactly, Rin chuckled. It's a start. Maybe one day they'll put our faces on some intergalactic currency, or use them as dartboards, Celine added, her grin as sharp as any knife. With the Council's words still bouncing around their heads like a particularly persistent echo, they settled into the familiar routine of keeping their beloved floating junk heap from turning into a coffin. Between the two of them, they'd managed to keep the rust bucket more or less intact, but only just. It was a miracle of engineering in much the same way a car held together by chewing gum and misplaced optimism was a miracle of transportation. Think we'll ever get a decent ship? Rin asked, his tone suggesting he wasn't overly invested in the answer. Who needs decent when you've got character? Celine replied, patting the wall as if it were a loyal dog. Character doesn't keep the oxygen from leaking out, Rin pointed out. Neither does whining, Celine shot back, her eyes twinkling with the kind of camaraderie that came from having each other's backs when the universe was determined to knock them flat. They slipped back into comfortable silence, the kind that spoke more than any words could. It was a silence filled with unspoken promises and shared history, the kind of thing you couldn't fake if you tried. And maybe that was enough, knowing they were in this together, whatever this ended up being. The comm unit crackled to life, shattering the silence with all the subtlety of a brick through a window. Attention, Rin Jax and Celine Voss. The voice buzzed, tinny, and laced with the kind of forced politeness that suggested stomach ulcers were on the horizon. The Council has reconsidered your offer. Celine rolled her eyes, her expression a tapestry of skepticism and I told you so. Reconsidered, Rin leaned forward, a wry grin playing at the corners of his mouth. Let me guess. They want us to demonstrate our methods in person, correct? The voice continued, oblivious to the sarcasm dripping from every syllable. Your presence is requested at the Council chamber for a detailed presentation. Sounds like a real party, Celine muttered, already gathering her tools with the kind of resigned inevitability one usually reserved for taxes and dentist appointments. Rin turned towards her, a question in his eyes. You up for it? Do I have a choice? Celine replied, her tone suggesting they'd missed the exit for choices a few planets back and were now firmly in deal-with-it territory. Together, they made their way back to the docking platform, the rust bucket's corridors echoing with each step like the whispers of ghosts. As the airlock slid open, the Council's chamber loomed ahead, its architecture every bit as pretentious as it had been the first time. Here we go again, Rin said, squaring his shoulders like a boxer stepping into the ring. Celine gave him a nod, her mouth a thin line of determination. Let's show them what humans are made of. The Council chamber was much as they'd left it, a congregation of alien life forms that looked like a natural history museum had thrown up on a political rally. The lead alien, all tentacles and self-importance, watched them with those unreadable eye stalks. Humans, it began, the disdain in its voice as thick as the walls around them. "We wish to understand your process." Process? Rin echoed, arching an eyebrow. "Do you want the version where we improvise with what's at hand, or the one where we pretend to know what we're doing?" Celine stepped forward, her tone deadly serious and all the more terrifying for it. "If you're looking for a manual, you're out of luck. We make it up as we go." A ripple of what could have been laughter or indigestion moved through the council. The lead alien remained stoic. "Your methods defy logic. That's what you get for underestimating humanity," Celine replied, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "We propose an experiment," the alien continued, unperturbed. "A controlled environment to observe your decision-making in real time." "Great," Rin said, his enthusiasm a convincing forgery. "We love being lab rats," the council muttered amongst themselves, a symphony of alien noises that would make a cat fight sound like a lullaby. "You will be compensated accordingly," the lead alien added, as if that sweetened the deal. Celine crossed her arms, the picture of skepticism. "And how do we know you're not just looking for an excuse to pick us apart?" "We assure you the benefits will be mutual," the alien stated, though its tone suggested they'd be the ones defining beneficial. Rin and Celine exchanged a glance, the kind of look that said, "Here we go again, but at least it's not boring." "Fine. We're in," Rin said finally, knowing full well they'd be dealing with the consequences of this decision for a long time yet. "But no poking or prodding unless we're unconscious." With that, the deal was struck, an uneasy alliance forged in the fires of mutual distrust and the promise of something more. As they left the council chamber, the weight of their agreement settled around them like a too-tight sweater. "I smell a setup," Celine muttered, her steps relaxed yet purposeful. Rin nodded, his expression a mixture of anticipation and dread. "Yeah, but what choice do we have? We either jump into the fire or sit on our hands and wait. Guess we'll find out how fireproof we really are," Celine replied, her tone suggesting she was more than ready to face whatever came next. Back on the rust bucket, they prepared for the next chapter of their unpredictable journey. As the engines thrummed and the stars beckoned, Rin found himself wondering what lay ahead. But that was the thing about humans. Their knack for diving headfirst into trouble was only matched by their stubborn refusal to stay down. "Here's to whatever comes next," he said, raising an imaginary glass once more. Celine joined him, her eyes gleaming with mischief and resolve, and to proving the galaxy wrong. Again, with the rust bucket roaring to life and the universe sprawling out before them, they shot forward into the unknown. Whatever awaited them, they'd face it together with sarcasm in their hearts and duct tape in their hands. After all, if there was one thing humans knew how to do, it was to thrive amidst chaos and uncertainty. And in a galaxy that seemed hell-bent on doubting them at every turn, that was a skill worth celebrating.